I stayed quiet, so they wouldn't leave. I was never a loud woman. Not because I had nothing to say, but because every time I spoke, someone reminded me to be quiet. I learned early that love came with conditions. If I was useful, I was welcome. If I was tired, I was invisible. So I chose usefulness. I cooked when my hands hurt. I listened when my heart was breaking. I stayed when leaving would have saved me. People called me strong. They never asked what it cost. I married a man who liked silence in a woman. Not peace, silence. The kind that doesn't question. The kind that doesn't ask. When I cried, he called it drama. When I asked for kindness, he called it weakness. When I stayed quiet, he called it love. Years passed like that. I raised children while swallowing my pain. I smiled through words that cut. I learned how to heal everyone, except myself. There were nights I slept hungry, so my children wouldn't feel it. There were days I hid bruises, not just on my body, but on my spirit. No one hit harder than neglect. No one hurt deeper than being needed, only for what you give. And the worst part? I believed this was normal. I believed suffering quietly was what made me good. Soft pause. Until one day, I realized something terrifying. Everyone had taken a piece of me, and no one had stayed. I used to believe that being kind would protect me. I was wrong. The more I gave, the more people took. At first, it was small things. Can you stay a little longer? Can you help just this once? Can you handle it? You're strong. So I stayed. I helped. I handled it. I told myself, this is what good people do. But kindness has a strange problem. Once people realize you won't say no, they stop asking politely. They start expecting. After my husband died, the house didn't feel like mine anymore. My son said, "Mom, it's better if you live with us." I believed him. I packed my memories into 2 suitcases. My wedding photo, old letters, a sweater that still smelled like him. I left my home, thinking I was going somewhere safe. But safety is not always kindness. Sometimes, it is control disguised as care. At first, I tried to be useful. I cooked. I cleaned. I watched the grandchildren. I told myself, don't be a burden. But slowly, the tone changed. If you're going to cook, do it right. Why are you always tired? You don't do much all day. I stopped defending myself. Because defending yourself makes you sound ungrateful. So I swallowed it. Every word, every look, every sigh that said, "You are in the way." They gave me a small room. Not really a room. More like a corner. No window. Just a lamp. I told myself, at least I'm not alone. But loneliness doesn't care how many people live in the house. Loneliness comes when no one sees you. I could hear laughter from the living room. I could hear life continuing without me. And I learned something painful. You can live in a full house and still be completely invisible. One evening, I dropped a cup. It shattered on the floor. The sound was loud, sharp. Everyone stopped. My daughter-in-law sighed and said, "Why is she always making messes?" Not Mom. Not her name. She. Like an object. Like something misplaced. I bent down slowly, my knees screaming in pain, and picked up the pieces. Glass cut my finger. Blood came out. No one noticed. That's when I understood. I wasn't family anymore. I was an inconvenience that hadn't left yet. The worst part was not the words. It was the looks. The eye rolls. The silence when I entered a room. The way conversations stopped. That silence says, "We wish you weren't here." And once you hear that silence, it stays with you forever. I used to believe love was permanent. I didn't know it could expire. I was never loud. I was never demanding. I was the one who adjusted, who stayed quiet, so others could be comfortable. When plans changed, I changed with them. When people were tired, I carried more. I became reliable, dependable, invisible. Years went by like this. And one day, I realized something painful. People don't miss what never asks for attention. Now I sit here, watching days pass quietly, wondering. The years I was silently broken, I used to believe that if I stayed kind, life would stay kind to me. I was wrong. After my children grew older, something changed. Not suddenly. Not loudly. Slowly. They stopped asking how I felt. They stopped noticing when I was tired. They stopped seeing me as a person. I became useful. Only useful. They came to me when they needed something. Babysitting. Cooking. Cleaning. Money I didn't really have. They said things like, "You don't do anything anyway. You're home all day. You should be grateful we still need you." So I helped. Even when my back hurt. Even when my hands shook. Even when my heart felt heavy. Because I was afraid. Afraid that if I said no, they would stop coming at all. One afternoon, I slipped in the kitchen. I fell hard. My hip burned. My head rang. I lay on the floor, calling out. No one answered. When they finally found me hours later, they didn't ask if I was okay. They said, "Why were you walking so carelessly? You're always causing problems. We don't have time for this." I remember lying in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking, so this is how it feels to be a burden. They never hit me. They never screamed. But they did something worse. They ignored my pain. They talked over me. They made decisions without me. They laughed when I cried. When I said I was lonely, they said, "You're being dramatic. You have everything. What more do you want?" What did I want? To be seen. To be heard. To be treated like I mattered. My house changed. My things were moved. My room became smaller. My memories were boxed away. I was told, "This is better for everyone. You should adjust. At your age, you don't need much." I learned to walk quietly. To speak softly. To exist without taking space. I felt like a guest. In the home I built. One night, I sat at the dinner table alone. The food went cold. No one noticed. I looked at the empty chairs, and remembered. I used to sit here, making sure everyone ate. Now no one noticed that I hadn't eaten at all. That night, I cried silently into my hands. Not because I was hungry, but because I finally understood. I had given my whole life to people who didn't know what to do with me anymore. People think abuse is loud. But sometimes, it's silence. It's neglect. It's being made to feel invisible, while still breathing. I wasn't beaten. I was erased. Slowly. Politely. Legally. And the worst part? I helped them do it, by never speaking up. There is a moment in life, when you realize, You are no longer loved. You are only needed. That moment came quietly for me. No shouting. No fight. No dramatic goodbye. Just a slow shift. A change in how people looked at me. In how they spoke to me. In how they stopped asking. And started assuming. I became the woman who was always available. Not because I had nothing to do, but because everyone believed my time was less important. I watched grandchildren grow, while their parents chased careers. Just for a few hours, they said. Just this weekend, they said. The weekends turned into years. I cooked meals that no one thanked me for. I stayed awake late, waiting for rides that never came on time. I put my life on pause, so others could move forward. And every time I felt tired, I reminded myself. This is what good women do. One winter morning, my body finally asked for rest. My chest felt tight. My hands shook. I sat on the edge of my bed, thinking. Maybe today, I can say no. But the phone rang. Can you still come? I really need you. So I swallowed the pain. Took medicine. Put on a smile. And I went. I cooked. I cleaned. I held children. No one noticed. My breath was short. No one asked why I sat down so often. Because when you are the strong one, people forget you're human. That night, alone in my house, I cried, not from pain, but from the realization that my suffering was invisible. People think abuse must be loud. They're wrong. Sometimes abuse sounds like, you're always free anyway. You don't mind, right? You're used to it. It looks like plans made without asking you. Decisions taken for you. Your needs placed last, every time. I wasn't hit. I wasn't screamed at. I was simply ignored. Ignored when I spoke. Ignored when I rested. Ignored when I needed care. And somehow, that hurt more. There was one day, I finally said it. I can't today. The silence on the other end was heavy. Then came the guilt. Oh, okay. We'll manage. But after that day, calls slowed. Visits stopped. Not because I was cruel, but because I stopped being convenient. That's when I learned the truth. Some people don't love you. They love what you do for them. My home once echoed with noise. Footsteps. Laughter. Arguments. Life. Now, the clock ticks louder than any voice. I cook less. Clean less. Speak less. Some days, I don't hear my own voice at all. I sit by the window, watching other people live. And I ask myself, did I give too much? Or did I just give to the wrong people? The hardest truth of growing old is not losing strength. It's realizing your kindness trained people to forget you have limits. I wasn't abandoned suddenly. I was slowly replaced by busier schedules, by newer priorities, by lives that didn't need me anymore. And the worst part? No one thinks they did anything wrong. If you are listening to this, please remember, the woman who never complains is often the one breaking silently. And one day, when she stops showing up, the silence will be louder than her absence ever was. There was a time when people didn't just know my name, they used it. They knew I would say yes before I even understood the question. If someone needed help moving, they called me. If someone needed money just for a week, they came to me. If someone needed a place to stay, my door opened. Not because I was strong, but because I was afraid to disappoint anyone. I told myself, if I am useful, I will be loved. So I became useful. Too useful. No one ever hit me. No bruises. No broken bones. But words. Words can bruise the soul, in places no one sees. They said, "You're too sensitive. You should be grateful. You're lucky we even need you." So I stayed quiet. Because silence felt safer than being accused of having feelings. There were years I paid bills that weren't mine. I skipped doctor visits so others could eat. I wore the same coat until it fell apart. And every time I helped, I waited for one thing: a thank you, a hug, someone to stay. It never came. The day I said I can't anymore was the day they stopped calling. Not slowly. Immediately. No fights. No explanations. Just silence. That's when it hit me. They didn't love me. They loved what I provided. Years later, when my hands started shaking, when my body grew weak, I needed help. Just once. I asked. They were busy. Always busy. That was the moment my heart broke in a way it never healed. Because I realized I had spent my life saving people who would not stop for 5 minutes to save me. Now when I sit alone, I don't ask why they left. I ask something worse. If I hadn't been so useful, would anyone have stayed just for me? When help turned into expectation, there is a moment in life when helping others stops being kindness and becomes expectation. I didn't notice when it happened. It doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly. At first, people said, "Thank you. You're so kind. I don't know what we'd do without you." Those words felt warm. They made the tired days feel worth it. So I kept giving. I watched children that were not mine. I cooked meals for homes I did not live in. I listened to problems I did not create. And slowly, gratitude disappeared. Not all at once. Just enough that I felt it in my chest. Now it sounded like, "Can you come over? Can you handle this? You're good at these things." Not please. Not if you can. Just assumption. They assumed I would always say yes. They assumed my time was empty. They assumed my body was strong. They never assumed I might be tired. When saying no felt like a crime, I tried once. Just once. A neighbor asked me to watch her children for the weekend. My back was aching. My hands were swollen. I said, softly, "I'm not feeling very well." She paused. Then laughed. "Oh come on," she said. "You're always fine." Always fine. That sentence stayed with me longer than it should have. Because I realized something terrifying. They didn't see me. They saw a service. So I swallowed my pain. Again. No one ever hit me. No one shouted. But emotional neglect doesn't need noise. It lives in silence. It lives in unanswered calls. In conversations that end when your problems begin. In people who listen, but don't hear. I could sit in a room full of people and still feel invisible. Because no one asked, "How are you really doing?" One winter morning, I slipped on the front steps. Nothing dramatic. Just a fall. But I lay there longer than I should have. Not because I couldn't get up. But because, for the first time, I wondered, who would notice if I didn't? I called 3 people. One didn't answer. One said they were busy. One said they'd come later. No one came. I pulled myself up using the railing. My hands were shaking. That day, something inside me broke. It wasn't that people were cruel. It was worse. They simply didn't think about me. I had trained them that way. I had taught them that I didn't need anything. That my pain was manageable. That my silence meant strength. But silence is not strength. Silence is survival. It wasn't that people were cruel. It was worse. They simply didn't think about me. I had trained them that way. I had taught them that I didn't need anything. That my pain was manageable. That my silence meant strength. But silence is not strength. Silence is survival. When you give too much of yourself, people don't love you more. They just get used to you. And when you finally slow down, they move on. There is a kind of pain that does not scream. It doesn't cry out loud. It doesn't beg for attention. It just stays. By the time I reached my 70s, people stopped asking how I was. They asked only one thing. Are you managing? Managing. Such a small word, for such a heavy life. I manage the pain in my knees. I manage the ringing in my ears. I manage the loneliness that settled into my bones like winter. Doctors talked around me, not to me. Cashiers spoke louder, as if age meant deafness. Young people smiled politely, then looked past me, like I was furniture. I was still alive. Still breathing. There is a kind of pain that does not scream. It doesn't cry out loud. It doesn't beg for attention. It just stays. By the time I reached my 70s, people stopped asking how I was. They asked only one thing. Are you managing? Managing. Such a small word, for such a heavy life. I manage the pain in my knees. I manage the ringing in my ears. I manage the loneliness that settled into my bones like winter. Doctors talked around me, not to me. Cashiers spoke louder, as if age meant deafness. Young people smiled politely, then looked past me, like I was furniture. I was still alive. Still breathing. People think old age is about death. It's not. Death is quiet. Simple. Old age is about realizing how much of yourself you gave away. Realizing how little you kept. I replay moments in my mind now. The birthdays I organized, where no one remembered mine. The nights I stayed awake, listening to other people's worries. The times I said, "It's fine, don't worry about me," when I was anything but fine. I wasn't weak. I was generous. And generosity, when given to the wrong people, slowly turns into loneliness. People think old age is about death. It's not. Death is quiet. Simple. Old age is about realizing how much of yourself you gave away. Realizing how little you kept. I replay moments in my mind now. The birthdays I organized, where no one remembered mine. The nights I stayed awake, listening to other people's worries. The times I said, "It's fine, don't worry about me," when I was anything but fine. I wasn't weak. I was generous. And generosity, when given to the wrong people, slowly turns into loneliness. Was to be remembered as someone who mattered.